maybe walk us through how you would set up like a true north metric for a product like obviously Wistia or Slack.
Yeah. I think there's just like some amount of like acknowledging the imperfections of it. And so, we use OKRs here at Wistia a fair amount, not novel. But when we're doing that, we talk a lot about the objective being the thing that we're trying to do. So, we want to make Wistia the most beloved video software company. We want to make a real dent in the market share over this year, things like that. And then talk about the key results as being often imperfect measures of that thing that we're after. And saying like, we're going to look at them a lot. We're going to measure our performance based on that, but they're also imperfect. And so there's, they're like, we don't want to fully put the blinders on and say like, hey, just go optimize for this one thing. Kind of everyone in this business is adults. We can understand nuance and complication and say like, hey, here's what we're going after as an objective. Think about your work and whether it serves that objective. How we're going to measure progress is kind of these numbers. And honestly, also saying like, trying to be upfront about like, hey, how imperfect are some of these? Sometimes if we're trying to grow the business, we can invest more. Revenue is a pretty darn good measure of that. And then on the same time, we have brand OKRs, and we're trying to increase the perception of Wistia or the amount of word of mouth. And, organic search volume for the Wistia term is not a perfect measure for that, but it's okay. and just acknowledging like when each is the case, I think is pretty critical. So, I like true north things. Like simplicity is a value here at Wistia. I think it is like helpful to have some simplicity and kind of things that you're focused on. The one thing that we talk about is like on that front is simplicity, but not papering over a thing that we're like actually trying to balance. So we as a business are often talking about we're an independent business. We're talking about, hey, like the growth in customer number, in market share is very important to us, but also revenue and like growing a sustainable business is very important to us. And at time we've said, well, for simplicity, we're going to pick one of those things and say, that's what our focus is. And, having one focus is nice. But this year we were like, that's not true. We're actually trying to balance these two things. And so let's be honest with ourselves and be honest with the company and say, hey, these are the two things that we're trying to keep in balance. And we're prioritizing this one over this one, but that's how we're thinking about it. And I think there's something to be said for, I'm diverging from your question a bit, but like there's value in simplification. There's also downsides of oversimplifying to the point where you're not really representing kind of what the leaders of the company are thinking and feeling. Mm-hmm. And when it gets to that point, we say, well, let's say what we're thinking instead of trying to oversimplify and get to this nice, beautiful North Star metric.
I love that. I love the balance that you're pulling out there. It's easier said than done. You want that simplified North Star metric that the whole company can rally behind, but also speaking to the nuances behind that number and how it's not just one number. There's so many like metrics that are leading indicators to that number, and you're devaluing the work that maybe another team is doing that doesn't directly impact that number. So yeah, OKRs, North Star metrics, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it, but I like the transparency approach that you're pulling out there as an independent business. I think that's super important.